Emptiness is at the heart of Buddhism, but it's also one of its most misunderstood ideas. At first glance, it seems to be saying everything is just nothing. So people try to clarify, oh, emptiness is just a bad translation. It doesn't really mean nothingness. It really means interconnectedness. So, which is it? Well, the truth is emptiness does mean non-existence, but not in the way you might think. To understand emptiness, let us first return to its Sanskrit roots, Śūnyatā. This word has two components, Śūnya meaning empty and tā meaning nature. So together, Śūnyatā means empty nature, the nature that is empty, or simply emptiness. But what is it that's empty and what is it empty of? When we normally use the phrase emptiness, we imagine a thing being empty of something else, a cup empty of water, a house empty of people, or even a sentence empty of meaning. In Buddhism, when we use this word, we mean to say that all phenomena, anything that is, was, or will be, is empty of self-existence, or svabhava. We know this from two key sources, the Buddhist teachings found in the Sutra on the Perfection of Wisdom, or the Prajna Paramita Sutras, and in the writings of the Madhyamaka school, the masters of the middle way, who established emptiness through logic and reasoning. So the Buddha said in the Greater Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, these various phenomena are all without svabhava. If it has no svabhava, then it is without any existence at all. If it has no existence at all, it cannot be said to have come together by conditions, nor to have dissipated through conditions. Another example from a commentary on this sutra states, if a phenomenon arises from the gathering of causes and conditions, it is empty of svabhava. If a phenomenon is without svabhava, then it is empty. Now that we know emptiness means a lack of self-existence, we need to investigate further. What is this self-existence things are empty of? This is the most crucial question in understanding emptiness. Because if we don't even know what things are empty of, how can we ever hope to understand what emptiness means? First, let's break up the word self-existence or svabhava linguistically. The prefix sva means self as in oneself or a thing itself, and the root word bhava, which comes from the verb bu, meaning to exist or to be. So as a noun, bhava means existence or being. Together, we can understand the word to mean self-being or self-existence. Though svabhava, aside from self-existence, has several other related definitions, most important of all, it can also mean fixed or determined nature, which defines any particular thing. So now we have a basic idea of what svabhava means. It is the existence of a thing itself and its nature that makes it what it is. Such as in the case of a cup, svabhava is the existence of that cup itself before us and the quality that makes it a cup, its function that allows us to drink and pour from it. And this is where the biggest misunderstanding of emptiness arises. More often than not, svabhava is taken to mean the nature of a thing being independently existent, rather than the existence of a thing itself. That is to say, svabhava is understood to be something that can exist by itself, free of causes and conditions, and therefore is permanent and unchanging. Well, that seems simple enough. Anything we can identify and analyze clearly arises from causes and conditions and is subject to change. Common sense stuff. And that is precisely how the meaning of emptiness becomes distorted. The Buddha's profound insight into the nature of reality is reduced to a simple platitude. Had the Buddha's realization been so simple, he would not have needed to teach it at such great length. So, what is the issue with this understanding? The problem is that it only negates a permanent, unchanging foundation behind the phenomena of the world, but leaves those phenomena themselves intact. In this view, the existence of things themselves is left untouched. What is emptied of is merely an imaginary, unchanging background that may exist within or behind ordinary things. So, to clarify the issue, this common sense view is limited to just saying entities are dependent on conditions and hence empty of independent existence. leaving us still with the existence of entities that are dependent. So in the end, these entities themselves are not empty. We only remove something that is external to them. That is to say, we have emptied a cup of water, but the cup is well and safe back on the table. Ultimately, phenomena are still phenomena, but in emptiness, phenomena are not phenomena. The law of identity, that is A equals A, is refuted in emptiness. For the Buddha said in the Diamond Sutra, that which is referred to as all phenomena are not all phenomena. Therefore, they are known as all phenomena. What we have instead is that A does not equal A. Yet, this common misunderstanding leaves us still with A equals A, since we have not empty things of themselves. So if emptiness is just meaning a lack of independent existence, we have not fulfilled the criteria for something to be empty of svabhava, the thing being empty of itself, or A not equaling A. A dependent apple is still an apple. It is not a pear nor any kind of other fruit or phenomena. So, apple equals apple. Nothing has really changed from our ordinary understanding of the world. This issue was encountered by Buddhists in the past, and one particular Madhyamaka author was questioned on this exact view. He was asked, if all phenomena change and are without svabhava, then there must be svabhavaless phenomena. What fault is there in that? He replies, if it has no svabhava, how can it be a phenomenon? How can it have any characteristics? Why not? It has no basis. The absence of svabhava is taught to destroy svabhava. If svabhavaless phenomena existed, then it cannot be said all phenomena are empty. If all phenomena are empty, how can there be a svabhavaless phenomena? Now, to arrive at a correct understanding of emptiness, we must turn to the greatest luminary of the Buddhist tradition and the first systematic philosopher of emptiness, Nagarjuna. He very clearly tells us, since things devoid of svabhava are not existent, this existing that comes to be can never hold. So, as we have covered, this depending on that, or interconnected existence, is not what emptiness means. Then, how will Nagarjuna characterize the lack of svabhava? He says, phenomena that arise from conditions are absent of svabhava. If svabhava is lacking, how could anything exist? So, we see that Nagarjuna still starts from the premise of phenomena arising from conditions, but he ends with a different conclusion. It is not the case dependently arisen phenomena exist without self-existence. Rather, whatever arises has no svabhava and hence does not exist at all. Now, knowing emptiness to mean the non-existence of any particular thing, we need to understand why things are empty. For this, we'll turn to the seminal work of Nagarjuna, the fundamental verses on the middle way. In this text, he will analyze a variety of views on how things are and how they come to be, rejecting each and every one of them, because they all assume things possess self-existence. We will look at the first chapter, where he presents the most essential argument for emptiness, non-arising. The myriad things arise not from themselves nor from other things, not from both nor from neither. Thus is it known there is no arising. Very simply, for there to be a thing, it must have arisen from certain conditions at a particular time. Without having arisen, a thing cannot exist. For example, take the case of ourselves. We exist because of our mother giving birth to us. If our mothers never gave birth to us, we would not exist. So we arose from the condition of birth. On the other hand, let's take the example of something that doesn't exist, like a unicorn. It does not exist since no unicorns have ever arisen anywhere under any conditions. So we'll never find one. Nagarjuna investigates arising with great scrutiny and identifies 4 possibilities under which it can occur. First, something arising from itself, a thing creating and producing itself. such as an apple somehow replicating itself. Second, something arising from some other thing, like a rope being made from straw. Third, something arising from both itself and other, combining the two previous possibilities. And the final one, something arising from neither itself nor something else. That is, this thing comes into existence from nothing at all. This technique, known as the Chatushruti, or the four phrases, is frequently employed in Buddhist logic, where the total possibilities for something are grouped into four kinds. The Nagarjuna will analyze each of these four possibilities for arising, finding that none of them are tenable, leading him to the conclusion that no thing can ever arise anywhere, meaning that nothing has any existence whatsoever, having never come into being. Let's take a brief look at each of the four possibilities and understand why the Madhyamakas took issue with them. The first possibility for something coming into existence is arising from itself. This option straightforwardly presents us with a few issues, the least of which is that if a thing already exists, it does not need to come into existence again. For that thing to arise from itself, it must already exist, right? If an apple already exists, it doesn't need to be grown again. Further, if a thing arose from itself, it would become two things instead of one. Object A, which causes object B, which is its result. That same apple couldn't at the same time be the tree it came from and itself. And finally, should a thing arise from itself independent of other causes, it would constantly be producing itself, since that is its nature. We would end up with an infinite amount of that thing. From a single apple in our room, an infinite amount of apples would be spawning from it at all times. Now, the second possibility of a thing arising from some other is often swept aside, simply by pointing out that if arising from self is impossible, then so is arising from other. Why? Well, first of all, if self-arising were to be impossible, there is naturally no other arising that can be established, since other is dependent on self. Just as we would not be able to identify a totally black book in a room without light, we always need some light to contrast it against. In addition, should one thing be the cause of another thing, those two things could not be separate entities, as neither could exist without the other. So, if two things were completely independent of one another, say a horse and a cow, we cannot describe either as the cause or the result of the other. Instead, when two things are causally dependent on each other, we can't describe them as being separate and therefore other any longer. Take, for the example, the case of straw being turned into rope. Let us assume the straw is the other that the rope arose from. But now, can that rope exist without the straw? No, it cannot. If we take away the straw, then there is no rope. When one thing must necessarily exist for the other to exist, such as a straw and rope, then they are not separate things. Thus, we have in reality returned to the first possibility, arising from self. And we have already seen the fault in that position. So, if arising from other is in truth just arising from self, then too is it a faulty position. Positions are often seen as untenable at face value given our previous analyses, so they're rejected in the following manner. Arising from both self and other is seen to carry the faults of both previous positions and hence twice as wrong. It would be like trying to get two blind men together to get a better look at something in a dark room. In the end, nothing can be seen. Further, having already shown arising from other as simply arising from self, there can be no combination of self and other, since there is only self. As for the last position, arising from neither self nor other, that straightforwardly contradicts our perception of the world and proposes that things don't arise from anything at all. But we don't really see apples or anything else really just popping into existence randomly around us, but rather we see them only existing under particular circumstances, like having been grown on an apple tree, so we cannot accept this proposal. Having analyzed exhaustively the ways a thing might come into existence and finding each possibility lacking, Nagarjuna concludes that no arising at all is possible for any phenomenon, and having never arose into existence, nothing can exist. Now comes the question faced by Buddhists. Is emptiness nihilism? If non-existence is the state of the world, why should we do anything at all? And why does it matter if things don't exist? When Buddhists face the criticism of nihilism, we have to be very careful in distinguishing these two views, since Buddhism, especially the Mahayana, advises adherents to take a proactive role in the world, ultimately aiming to assist all sentient beings to attain liberation. To cut things short, emptiness is not non-existence. When we reject the existence of things, we're not in its place asserting non-existence. Logically, for non-existence to be established, there must be something which once existed but now no longer does. However, in emptiness, no particular thing has ever been present except to our mistaken perception. So, as there has never been a thing that existed, there cannot be a thing that is non-existent. Thus, emptiness is the middle way beyond the extremes of existence and non-existence. So, critically, emptiness is not an attempt to establish some metaphysical reality of nothingness. It is a counteragent to our mistaken views. Ordinarily, we see the world as made of real, discrete, and particular existence that can be identified separately from one another. Due to this perception, we grasp at the existence of a self that needs to be satisfied and objects that satisfy the self. The Buddha referred to this as the origin of suffering. So, to cure this affliction, the Buddha taught emptiness. These independent existences are nothing but a mistake in our mind. When we no longer grasp at things that truly exist, we're open to seeing reality as it is, free from particular things that are made to satisfy us, and a real self that needs to be satisfied. Now we see emptiness as a corrective statement rather than an assertion. Like when our friend has an hallucination of a giant elephant on his desk and bats away, we can reassure him that there is no elephant on his desk, and the target of our reassurance is the mistaken illusion of the elephant, not the desk itself. And once our friend calms down, we no longer need to go on about how well the desk is made, how well designed it is, or how ergonomic it is. Likewise, the Buddha saw us mistakenly imposing self-existence due to a mistake in our cognition, and very kindly let us know that it is not really there. Therefore, it is proclaimed in the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. We have not departed the realm of forms through emptiness, but now see it for what it is, free from the burdens of existence and nothingness. We will conclude with this eloquent elucidation of emptiness by the Persian-Chinese Madhyamaka master Jiaxiang Jizang. Now we can speak of form itself as the ultimate reality. This fictitious form cannot exist, nor can it be nothing. Within the four possibilities of existence, nothingness, both, and neither, this form cannot be found. Thus, form is itself the ultimate reality.